Hello and welcome. You're viewing a Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Good afternoon. You're here with Mesa County Compass once again. We've changed locations, so this is going to look a little bit different. But we do have Andrew Gingrich, that is the actual regional director, regional transportation director. Is that correct?
No, that's my boss. I'm the transit planner.
Oh, you're the transit planner. Okay, my mistake. He is the transit planner for GVT and other modes of transportation around Grand Valley.
Yeah, I focus mostly on Grand Valley Transit, but our office also is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, so that's looking at all kinds of transportation in the valley. So.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah. They're getting carried away here.
Yep.
I'm so anxious to get a hold of you.
It's
Anyway.
good to feel wanted.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. Anyway, would you give us just a little brief synopsis of your background and why you got into this business?
Oh, wow. Okay, good question. I could probably spend more than an hour on that journey, but I'd say I have a bachelor's degree in history and a master's degree in community and regional planning. And yeah, I think I went that direction because I care about how communities are able to how we're able to interact with each other as a community, and how kind of the structures that we build help us or hinder us from being able to connect with each other and be a community together. So that was probably my motivation going into it, but you know, there were lots of different avenues you can go in the field, and so I was got into what's called GIS, which is Geographic Information System. So it's like a lot of mapping and analysis through mapping software. And I did that in Albuquerque for 5 years at the MPO there called the Mid-Region Council of Governments. At the same time, I started this long-distance relationship with someone in Grand Junction.
Okay, so I was going to ask how we got here.
Yeah. So so then after a while, I moved up here. I married into this place. And then I was a planner with the city of Grand Junction for about 9 months. And then the opportunity opened up at the RTPO, which is the office I'm from, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization and Grand Valley Transit. And having worked in the MPO before, I really like working at that level. So I took the opportunity to change. It was a short stint at the city. I had a good experience there, but yeah, I'm kind of nerdy, and I kind of liked the analysis and the being able to kind of work in that. So yeah, I moved over there in 2019, and I've been there since.
Ah, very good.
So, and we're glad you're here. And we want you to like it.
Well, you started with coffee. So.
Yeah. No, we mean Grand Junction.
Oh, sorry.
No coffee, just with us.
Yeah.
Well, we've been kind of interested in the whole GVT thing for years, and I have to tell you, because it's been around for a long time, and even when my girls were young, the threat was, I have to go to work, and Mom, how are we going to get somewhere? And I said, you could always ride the GVT. Pox!
Yeah.
No, we would never ride that. We would rather be shamed, walk through the streets naked, because that's so embarrassing to ride the GVT. So just a long thing on that. And I did use the RTD a lot when I was at the Capitol and riding out from Lakewood, and it seemed to work really well. But we noticed, like in recent news articles in the Business Times, that GVT doesn't seem to be doing very well fiscally. And so we're looking for what is the plan, because it seems like you have federal and state funding, and that's picked up a lot of the cost of the GVT. So What are you looking at in terms of numbers? What makes it feasible? What are the problems that make it so expensive right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could go right into that. The transit service is funded with multiple sources. So most of it's federal. But typically it's about 60% outside funded and 40% locally funded. That varies depending on, like, for example, capital costs are usually 80% or 85% federally funded or outside funded. That can vary kind of based on capital costs varying. But in terms of operating costs, that's been about 40% or so. To get into like the more current financial situation, the costs have gone up. We haven't changed our service really. It's been pretty much the same service for over 2 decades in terms of an 11 route system. There have been at times some changes. There was a 12th route and then there was 11 again, and we've done a few different things. And there's been tweaks and changes to some of those routes. And we do have a pilot 12th route, which I could talk about later, which is currently doesn't have any local funding going to it. But the costs to provide service have gone up, and the cost of like lots of things have gone up. The cost to build infrastructure has gone up. And part of that was, so Grand Valley Transit is owned by Mesa County. So Mesa County is kind of the holder of it, but it's funded with an agreement with other governments like Grand Junction and Palisade and Fruita to pay for the local portion of it. And sorry, I lost my train of thought there. The federal portion. Sorry. What I was going to say was the operations are contracted out. So Mesa County owns the buses, owns the facilities. The partner local governments are pitching in to help, and we're getting also outside funding from state and federal government, mostly federal. And the drivers themselves and the operators are a company that's contracted out.
So is that a savings?
Different systems do it different ways. So some systems are what's called directly operated. So then all the employees would be employees of the city or the county that owns the system, and some others are to contract out the operations. Sometimes they contract out the operations and the vehicles. So like you could have a system where the operator's in charge of bringing their own vehicles and maintaining those vehicles. So, but it's pretty common in cities our size to have contracted operations. But every transit system, and this is what's kind of fun about the world of transit, is very different. It is funded differently, because it's something that the community has to kind of establish, and so there's funds available from it from the outside, but it's completely locally run and designed. There's no one from the state or the federal government telling me where to put a bus route or anything like that. It's a local system that there's like funds available for if you within certain parameters what you're able to do with that funding. But so every community kind of dreams up and builds its own transit system. And so there's a lot of different approaches to it and different arrangements between different governments and different system ideas, different purposes, because every community is different.
Are we one of the few that have the natural compressed gas?
So CNG buses, and I don't know if I answered all the questions, but I did want to, just because of financial stuff, I don't want to miss that. So,
well, we'll come back even if you miss it.
So what's happened is, because costs have gone up, we get a certain amount of funding from the outside, from federal funding, and that typically goes up a little bit every year, but the costs have gone up beyond that too. And a lot of that is lot of that is tied to driver wages and kind of, yeah. I mean, we not that long ago we were paying drivers $12, $13 an hour, $15 an hour. Now the starting wage is like 21, and there was the labor, like a lot of labor issues. So the pandemic really changed a lot of stuff. So there was like a labor shortage. We actually cut service on Saturdays for over a year because it just there's so many drivers working overtime, and that was the agreement with our contractor. But it seemed like that was in everyone's best interest to try to right size it for the situation. So yeah, so driver wages have gone up quite a lot, and it's had a good effect. Like we're in a pretty decent driver situation in terms of having enough drivers. But that's part of it, is that we've seen an increase in cost of running the service, and the driver themselves is one of the bigger costs of transit.
Yeah, that and if we own the vehicles, aren't we responsible for our own maintenance as well?
We are, and we also have had there's kind of a cycle with purchasing vehicles and the life cycle of the vehicles. So we hit it just perfectly wrong with COVID, where we had an aging fleet. All the vehicles were kind of purchased around the same time in the middle of last decade, and they all started getting to the end of their life right about when COVID hit, and then all the supply chain issues, like costs of parts, costs of all kinds. I mean, transit wasn't the only place to experience that, but it became really challenging to purchase buses, to order buses, to get parts for buses. So, and we had all these dinosaur buses that were just like.
I was going to say, are those buses rotated through fleets throughout the United States, or are they new buses that you get?
Usually they're new buses that we get. Yep. We've been really successful, and like I said, those are usually 85% federally funded or outside funded. And
For the purchase of the bus.
For the purchase of the bus, yep. And we've been really, really successful. This will tie into the CNG question. We'd be really, really successful in getting bus fleet replacement over recent years to try to get us through that that cohort of buses kind of aging out. And we're actually in a pretty good fleet situation now, but we're kind of still, there's still some like buses on order that'll be coming in for replacement, but we're actually going to be in a really good shape for having buses for the prolonged period, for the next kind of generation of buses. And those are all competitive grants, meaning it's not like so for operations, it's what's called a formula grant, so you get a certain amount for you every year. We get from DOT. For buses, it's competitive, so you have to, all the other transit agencies out there, you have to say, we need these buses. They put aside a certain amount for bus capital across the country, and they say, we have to make our case that we really need these buses. And we've been really successful, partly because some of those programs are for what's called a low-no emissions category, and CNG is considered low emissions, not no emissions. And so there was maybe a little less competition in that space, so we were able to get outside funding for our buses, and we're really successful in the competitive process for getting those.
But with a change in what is the priority of the federal government in terms of green energy, is that going to influence the amount of money that you receive from the federal government in that area, or your competitiveness in a grant? Because now we don't care if you're doing that, we just...
in terms of the no emission space, so that would be like battery electric buses or something like that. Yeah, I think that probably that environment's probably changed. But for CNG vehicles, CNG seems like that's still been it seems like that's got openings for that as a fuel source or a propulsion system for a bus. So yeah, in terms of the future, I mean, every year it's a new cycle, and they'll kind of have a new programs. But historically, it's been traditional, no-low, and I don't know what the next round will be. The thing is, we don't actually have buses every bus that's eligible for replacement, like has passed its useful life, we've been able to get funding for. Some of those are still coming in, and that is a fantastic place to be in as an agency. So, and again, these things are cyclical, but yeah. So we've been really successful with the fleet situation, coming through a very difficult fleet situation. It's probably been a lot of our focus, honestly, over the past few years. Well, more than a few years, but since I've been there, it's been
Right.
what are we going to do about the fleet? But yeah, that some of that program contributed to the fleet maintenance facility, and that's actually improved a lot of our turnaround for getting buses back up, and we have our own space, our own dedicated staff, and in some ways we're seeing some savings. Some of that's because we have younger buses as well, so there's not as much breakdown. Because what really can cost you is it's called unscheduled maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
you
we know how that is.
Preventative maintenance, but when something goes down, or you have to tow it in or something,
Right.
that's really eats up the budget pretty quick.
What about the cost of fuel? Because what
Good
I've
question.
read is that it actually is more expensive to use compressed gas than it is to use regular gas. Is that, the cost per gallon?
Yeah, that's not that. In our case, that's not the case.
And why is that?
We have an agreement. So we partner with the city of Grand Junction for maintenance. So we actually, our mechanics are city employees. They're dedicated transit mechanics, but so GVT is a really it's a collaboration between the different governments, and they have all kind of contributed in different ways in different capacities. And so the maintenance side is the way that the city, we pay for it as a collectively. But the city has their mechanics that or is employs the mechanics. The city has the CNG, a lot of CNG vehicles as well. Some of that is with the Persigo wastewater treatment plants, where we recover methane from there, and that is pumped back to the city. So trash trucks and street sweepers, they've got like a lot of CNG heavy fleet, and so because of that, we this is way before my time, but they made an effort to have a goal for all CNG fleet, and at that time too, I think that was I want to say like 2011, 2012 or something. Again, before I was here, but I believe there's better people to ask than me, but I believe the push to do that was kind of an energy independence kind of push, so to try to like have an alternative or a local kind of fuel source, I guess. For us, the city has like a set rate with because we'll have CNG that comes from the wastewater treatment facility. That varies in what the percentage of that is. It's significant, but most of the CNG is still conventional CNG, and that the city has a set rate for us for that.
Okay.
So it doesn't really fluctuate like the price of diesel fuel or something.
Right. Okay.
So it's stable for us, and has been historically cheaper. I don't know if every CNG system or other transit systems are in that situation, but yeah. But for us, it has been a cost savings on the fuel side.
Good.
Yeah.
Your turn.
My turn? Okay. I'm going to ask something that's going bouncing back and forth. There's nothing patterned at this at all. But your ridership. Before COVID, it was building. Then COVID came and it crashed, basically. Everything did, but we, the transit system definitely had an issue. It's starting to build back up again, but it's very slow. The cost of tickets doesn't seem to outweigh the cost of running the vehicles due to the fact that there just aren't that many riders. Can you kind of give us a overview of that and why and how we're going to dig out and
Yeah. Well, and are some of the routes used more than others, or some of the times used more, and would it make sense to change either some of the buses, or because we don't see anybody riding, like Ruth walks every morning at 6, and the GVT goes by and nobody on it.
And nobody waiting.
And
Yeah. So yeah, lots of good questions there. What was the first one?
yeah, just ridership. How
Just
does that
ridership.
ridership
Just
look?
ridership.
Yeah. So we would track really, really, really closely. I'm actually surprised at how closely sometimes with national ridership trends. So you had a pretty large increase in transit ridership across the country, kind of like in the 2009, 10, 11, 12 period, and GVT did the same thing. And then you kind of had a kind of crest and level off a little bit, and kind of stay steady out until COVID, and then it crashed, and then you kind of dug yourself back, and most of the country is around 70 to 80% of pre-COVID ridership, and we're in exactly the same place.
So what is the ridership though? Not national trends for Grand Junction, since it's looking like they want to put on a tax to be able to, an additional tax to be able to keep GVT going. What is our ridership, not in a national term, but what in Grand Junction?
In Grand Junction, make it specific.
Yeah,
Would you want to guess or no?
yeah, you can
Well,
guess.
No, I know the answer.
Do we want to guess?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the time, because this summer we took Scott Bell, Vitalifts, and us went on a ride, and it was when it was free. And we were really impressed with how comfortable they were. I mean, that air conditioned, it was really nice. But the ridership they were pretty full, and
But not nearly as full as they should have been.
and they were tending to go to different spots. I guess my problem would be is that, and I'm going clear off, so I'll make it kind of different. Say one of the things I heard were a lot of school kids ride GVT to get to their school, and what my question is are they riding it because they're less than 2 miles, so they can't pick up the bus, or and how many of them are there, and how close to the school do they actually get dropped off?
Yeah.
And does that make up a bunch of
Yeah.
your ridership? So I guess I'm looking at who's riding too.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, so it's over 600,000 rides a year. Pre-COVID, we were over 700,000. So yeah, so we're still building up, and we've kind of leveled off too. In terms of ridership, that's kind of the pattern. I think the buildup was actually, I mean, it started to slow down, but I think it was pretty quick to recover. It was 20% a year, I think, for a few years. So like those are, if you could continue that, God, that would be a lot of riders. But yeah, we certainly do have the capacity to take more people. We've had basically the same system for 20 years, and the ridership has kind of gone up and down. And there's a lot of things that contribute to ridership. And
So what would they be?
well, I think the economy, I mean, there's things like convenience or, where you might choose to ride. But I think really a way to think about transit is almost like a piece of infrastructure, and a piece of infrastructure that is built to handle a lot of varying conditions. So it creates kind of like an insurance policy if a region or a person would have a change in their circumstances. So like if your car breaks down or for some reason you can't drive, there is a way for you to still get around. And GVT is not a very extravagant bus system, I would say. It's a very baseline bus system, and was really never designed to be competitive with driving. It was designed to really provide an option for people to use it if they need it, or if they want to use it. I mean, it's not not just for people who need it, it's for everyone, it's for the whole public, and actually that's a requirement if you're gonna use federal funds, and it's, we can't say no to somebody who wants to ride the bus.
No, yeah.
It's a public system,
Right.
it has to be open to everyone. And so, we do have a history of really focusing on people who would really need the service. GVT's predecessor, again, this is just from what I know from reading what I can gather from the how it was designed. People have been around longer than I that could answer that question, but or would know the history better. But it was originally something called Maceability, which was a service that was specifically for, I think, seniors and people with disabilities. And then there was this opportunity to do a full-fledged public transit system. There might have been some change in kind of like federal transportation policy. I'm actually not that clear on that. But my understanding is it was Commissioner Kathy Hall was involved in the beginning of it. And a lot of high school students actually were people that showed up to say we want a full-fledged public transportation system. It was kind of experimental at first, and then after a couple years, they really went to kind of a traditional fixed route system, which is the most, in most cases, the most cost-effective way of moving people.
So do you see a lot of kids, and what ages would they be using the bus to get to school? And does the bus go directly to the school, or are they dropping them off a half a mile away, or what are they? Because that was one of the reasons that I heard, well, we wouldn't want the GVT to go away because of the number of district students. So I wondered how many of them, what are their ages, and how close do they get to the school based on the routes?
It varies by route because our buses only come once an hour. So like I said, it's kind of a safety net system in terms of, so you can, in transit, you can say, let's have a small area and put all of our service in this small area and run high frequency service that's really convenient. But then you can't, or you can choose to kind of spread out and create that kind of baseline access for people. And GVT's system has been designed as like a spread out system, pretty low level of service, but again, creating that kind of opportunity for people to use it if they need to use it. So with 1 hour frequencies, the bus coming once an hour, it sometimes lines up well with the school schedule and sometimes it doesn't.
Right.
So some of our routes see a huge number of students and others don't necessarily.
And those students that are riding, are they just riding because they're too close to?
I would suspect yes. I mean, I don't.
Because if you're over 2 miles, then the bus
Exactly.
picks you up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I would expect that probably a lot of those riders riding to school would be within the 2 mile. Well, I think for middle school and high school it's 3 miles.
Oh.
And for elementary school it's 2 miles, I think, for the busing area. But it's a program that, when we think about people that don't have the opportunity to drive, like students are one of those populations. And we think about trying to help families, even if you have a car as a family or you have 2 cars as a family, if you can free up having to drive your kid around everywhere, like then you're allowing parents to maybe you don't have to buy that 3rd car for your kid, or you don't have to go out of your way in a long commute to get to work, or that it kind of extends the opportunities for you to work late or something. So it's just we try to focus on the communities. The seniors are the other side of that too. That we're like who's really going to benefit from the system. So, and this does tie back to the idea of fares and what we call fare recovery, like how much the fares pay for the system. Like every transit system in the country is the fares don't cover the transit system. And, it's really, our view is really we're trying to provide a public service to create these opportunities for people to, move throughout the community. And I care a lot about efficiency. We try our best to be the best stewards we can be of the opportunities we have to provide the service. But our focus is really trying to get people moving around the community. It's not a system where you're, making money or recovering all that money back into the system. So but when you compare us to our peer agencies in Colorado and in the Intermountain West, we tend to have a little bit better fare recovery, and we also have a somewhat larger service area than other communities because Grand Junction is kind of spread out. So we actually have a challenge in being efficient with the spread outness of our community. So we have pretty decent numbers when we compare ourselves to our peers, and our peers are actually quite a lot lower than the national average. There's a lot of questions there. I feel like I went down like one way.
Yeah.
You're okay.
And it's a Friday afternoon, so I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, it's okay.
But yeah, but we think like students are high ridership potential and
No,
that's a
I didn't
population
say
we want.
potential. I said, do they ride
Oh yes, so we have about 40,000 boardings a year by students.
by students?
Okay.
Okay.
And it's something like who signed up for the D51 student pass program. I think it's over 650.
Students
Yeah.
did?
Mhm.
Okay.
Or families, you sign up, your
Yeah.
parents have to sign up their students for the pass program.
And I can understand students riding it more. I really have an issue with senior citizens trying to get to the bus stops to
Yes,
ride them.
yeah.
You know, I mean, that would be difficult. I know we're surrounded by neighbors who they've since passed, but are totally incapable of going down here at the corner to the bus stop or going up here to 30 Road to the bus stop. They can't get there from here. And so seniors aren't probably the ones that you're going to be focused on for this kind of thing.
Trying to remember the last survey we did because we don't like record everyone's age that gets on the bus, but
Right.
we do a survey every now and again, and I can't remember. I think it's over 10% of our ridership is retired anyway. So and also we do offer something called paratransit service, which is another important thing I
Right.
think
Yes.
for people to understand about transit, that because we're spending federal money to run the service, because of the Americans with Disabilities Act, you have to spend it in a way that everyone benefits from it, regardless of whether or not they have a disability. So the way that that's been worked out since that was passed is that if you have a disability that prevents you from, not just that disability, because all of our buses are ADA accessible, they have audio and visual announcements,
Right.
they have wheelchair securements, they have ramps that deploy. So we want the fixed route system to also be rideable and usable by people with disabilities. But if your disability is severe enough to the point that you are unable to ride fixed route, and if you aren't able to walk your bus stop, that can be a reason. Then there's something called paratransit service, which is a kind of more curb-to-curb, door-to-door service, which people see, these smaller buses moving around, and those are negotiated in terms of the trip times, but they're supposed to be comparable to fixed route service. So in terms of the time it takes for you to go from point A to point B, it should be somewhat comparable to what it would take you if you took fixed route from that location.
So on the
So-
paratransit, does it take you directly to, say, is it fixed rate in terms of, like, if you lived in one place, it's taking you shopping, it's not taking you to the doctor? Or, do you see, because that would be individual. I mean, is paratransit going to be, this bus stop stops here, and then we're going to Walmart, or we're going to the mall, or we're going...
Right, no, it's more of a curb-to-curb service. So it's kind of more like they come to where you are and they take you to where you're going.
Okay,
Yeah.
a specific location, so
Yeah,
it could be a doctor
It could be, yeah,
appointment.
any kind, and we can't. I mean, the paratransit trip is exactly the same as fixed route, so people take fixed route to go to work, people take fixed route to go to the doctor, people take fixed route to go to a social event. The same, there's no specific trip requirement for
Requirements for
taking
that.
paratransit. You could take paratransit to go meet with your family.
So what about the cost of the difference between paratransit tickets and the regular?
So in terms of fares, you're required to limit your paratransit cost to no more than 2 times the fare of your fixed route. So our fixed route single ride fare is $1.50. So then our paratransit fare is $3 per ride.
And that's
For one way.
And that's one way.
That's one way, yeah. And but the cost to provide it, per rider is more than 4 times expensive per rider than a fixed
Right.
route. But that, this is, these are people that need that. And actually,
And it's
There-
much less expensive than an Uber or
Sure.
a taxi.
yeah. Well, for them, for sure. And yeah, for us, like taking people door to door and picking people up like that is more costly than having people line up on the line and picking them up one by one.
Of course.
If you were, going to pick up your friends to go somewhere, if they could all meet in one location or kind of be in a line, it'd be faster than going through the neighborhood. So same idea. But paratransit, we do bring a lot of people that have maybe cognitive disabilities to their day programs. That's a very common rider. So, it's one of those services. It's about 20% of our total system cost, but it's really important because it gets people into. These are people who would likely be just totally isolated,
Right.
not connected to the community. And that's just, we're providing a real big boost to their quality of life. So, that's. And
And-
it is, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and does that go into the entire GVT when you say you have 600,000 people? Is that including the paratransit,
Paratransit.
or
It
is
does
that?
include paratransit, but I think that's probably maybe about 5% of ridership. I would, off the top of my head, or so. Yeah,
Because there must be certain qualifications that you have to have
It's an
in order
that's right.
to ride.
Yep, and it's supposed to be a high bar because it's a it's a more resources are used in that. So we want to make sure that those resources are reserved for people who really need it. But yeah, it is an eligibility-based program, so you would kind of have an application. You have to have like a medical verification, so you have to have a medical professional be able to say yes, that this is the condition, and then you have an interview, and then you're able to have eligibility. And that's and so the service area is 3 miles away from a fixed route line, and that's what creates that service area. So if you are inside that service area, you can use paratransit.
Okay. Thinking about that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, your turn. Go ahead. Get
My
along.
turn. Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I've been asking. I don't know because I don't ride the bus or paratransit or anything else. If I were to have a need today to go out and catch the bus, I don't have tickets. Are you able to get them at the bus?
Yeah, so you can pay with cash on the bus for a single ride or for a day pass.
Okay.
So a single ride is $1.50 for one way. We don't have any transfers, so you have to pay every time you get on the bus. And it's $3.75 for a day pass, which you can just use all day long. So, and you can purchase that with cash on the bus. We also have what's called mobile ticketing, which is on your phone. There's an app that you can buy to purchase a pass on, and then you basically hit a button that activates your ticket right when you get on the bus, and you show the driver, and that expires after 10 minutes or something. So you can't keep using it, but or you can buy any of our passes on the mobile ticket, or you can at our 2 transfer facilities, downtown or West Transfer, where we have a dispatcher and a ticket window. That's where you can go buy your monthly passes or your annual passes, whatever. So, but yes, you can pay to get on the bus with cash.
So on your bus ridership, we've got students, we've got older people that are either riding. You think it's about 10%. So then, what?
Who are the others?
Yeah, who are the others that
Yeah.
are the other 80%?
So Well, yeah, I think students,
And-
college and students, I think is about 20%. Anyway, but no. So if you would just randomly pull someone off of our bus, it would be a person who is a low wage earning person, likely on their way to work. That's our most common rider.
So that would be about 70% then, you think, or?
It's kind of hard to say. I would think somewhere in that ballpark that it would be people who would. I'll have to look at that. Go back and look at the survey that we had in 2023. But it's the majority of our riders. Yeah.
Or low-income wage earners.
Low-income wage earners. Yeah.
Okay.
And you can see that when you look at what stops have the most boardings. A lot of times they're in places that are like commercial areas,
Right.
in places where you would have kind of those service jobs, those kinds of things. And also that's more the destination. So when you're picking people up in a neighborhood where we live a little more spread out, so the place where your trip comes from, or where you get on the bus or off the bus, like where you live, that's going to end up being a little bit lower and like one by one picked up. But then where you land is going to likely be more in those commercial areas. So
Yeah, it's just hard for me to picture that, and this would be your job, to make sure that those people that are utilizing the bus get close enough to the job and can get there at times when it's real effective for them to be working. So do you find that to be the case, or do you find that a lot of people say the bus doesn't really help me because it doesn't get close enough or it's not at the right time?
yeah, I mean, certainly if we expanded our hours, that would provide more opportunity.
Does the route itself need to be expanded, or just
So-
because you're covering what people need?
So the more that your route zigzags around, the less efficient it is for the person who got on at the beginning. So it's kind of, I mean, it's trying to find the right balance there. If you know, the fastest way would be to get on, go straight to where you're going, and get off. But maybe you're skipping over a pocket that has a lot of potential trans riders. So I think best practice now is to try to have bus lines that kind of run more straight and more fast, because anytime you can increase speed, you're increasing efficiency. But what comes to mind when you mention that is that I believe a lot of our riders are working in these commercial areas, and the commercial areas are really kind of hard to walk around, and because of the way they were developed. So the transit system is really connected to your pedestrian system, because at some point you need to be able to get to your stop. Your final leg is likely to be walking to your bus stop, or from your bus stop to your final destination. So when we don't have a good sidewalk network, that's going to decrease the viability of transit. But to me, it's kind of an irony. That's the word. It's a challenge that a lot of the people who probably use our service and need our service are going to these areas that are probably harder to walk in. That are harder to serve transit. But we do. I mean, all the large commercial areas are served by GVT.
I was just wondering on some of that, because it seems like you base how you're going to determine your routes on surveys that people. Is that how you say that you determine when to run, how often to run, is based on what the need is? Or did you just determine this is the city, this is how we're just going to have it every so often? Or is it based on what people are actually needing and riding, and how do you know?
Where people would want to go. How do you know?
Yeah.
So we do what's called a transit propensity analysis, which is looking at both the density, so like how close together things are, because the more spread out you are, the harder it is to serve well with transit. So if you've got places close together, that's more likely to work for transit. especially if they're in a line. So, so where are the people that are lower income or have less access to vehicles? So we have information, census information on that, and what's the density of that, and then what is the density of employment locations, and specifically weighted to those lower wage areas. And so then you can see a map that kind of has hot spots. I didn't design the current system, and I haven't changed the current system that much, because I think that when you do that, you do see that a lot of the places that there's a lot of transit or a higher transit propensity, GVT does serve those areas. What's harder to know is the actual trip of the individual. That's where we don't have really great data on. This person's getting on here and getting off there. But we do try to link those hot spots together, and the current system does a decent job of that. But there are certain routes that I like better than other routes. And there are a few places that I think, for me, Clifton is one where the route that's in Clifton kind of zigzags around a lot, and it's harder to use. And you also see a certain part of Clifton that lights up as like, this is probably like a high transit need area. So we are looking at those things, and I am personally a bit conservative in that regard, where people might be depending on this line for the regular use. We have a very consistent ridership, so like Monday through Friday, it's very similar level of riders.
And what would that be?
Like riders per day. I think average weekday is hovers around 2,000 rides a day. I'm kind of conservative about changing routes, because there are people that are relying on those routes, in a regular day-to-day reliance. So I don't want to just kind of willy-nilly start to play with the routes, because you're kind of messing with people's lives in real time. So
Right.
I take that job really seriously. I don't want to just, even if there is some efficiency to be gained by changing a part of a route, like I want to be really careful in doing that, because I think disrupting has a cost, and even if maybe it builds back stronger, typically when you change a route dramatically, you see a drop in ridership until it can kind of build up.
And I notice it's very consistent every time. I mean, I can set my clock by GVT as a general rule.
Yeah.
It's been very good as far as that goes. When I walk, I see it. I can plan on it here when I walk this direction, or I can plan on it there when I walk this direction. So I understand that pretty much on time with everything.
Yeah, I think our on time is pretty good, and a lot of that is because we have these transfer facilities. So the 3 big transfer facilities, all the buses come, they huddle up, and you get on the one you want, and then you go. So those transfers, a lot of times people don't want to transfer because you have to get off and then catch the next one, and it seems inconvenient. But the timed transfer facilities are seamless. You get on, you get off. There's like a 10-minute window for all the buses to come together and you get on. So if you're changing buses at Clifton Transfer, at Downtown, or at West Transfer, it's almost like the continuation of the bus that is on.
You can pretty well count on it.
Yeah, and coming every hour is not very frequent, but there's something about knowing, the bus is always coming here at 20 after or 30 after, whatever. And
Well, you can kind of plan your schedule around that for the most part.
Yeah.
If you work, sometimes your employer will work with you and let you do X changes that have to be made.
Right. Yeah, and if we had more resources to run higher frequencies, that would make the trip more viable for more people. But
Why do you think people don't want to ride? Because I think one of the things that we found getting on the bus especially the downtown transfer station, there were a lot of people that were just laying around on them, seemed to not have a destination, just be, and maybe a little sketchy. Do you think that that's part of why people don't utilize it more, or just the convenience strictly?
I think that there's probably a lot of different reasons why people would choose not to ride the bus. And you are riding with the general public, so you're I mean, that's one thing I do love about transit is it kind of brings you into close contact with your another citizen of Grand Junction that's a different, potentially different walk of life even. But yeah, I mean, everyone has a different time constraints, different levels of comfort or convenience or those kinds of requirements. So, and we have to serve everybody. So we
Right.
try to make it as comfortable and as convenient as we can. But yeah, and people aren't supposed to be loitering around the transit, so that we try to address that. But yeah, everyone's kind of got their different thresholds for when they would make a choice to ride or not. Yeah. But I'll say, I really think, and I mean, our drivers are all different people, and if you ride a lot, you'll learn some different personalities of drivers. There's some really great ones, but by and large, our drivers really care about their riders. They're really they have relationships with their riders, and they do a good job, kind of, stewarding people, shepherding them around. I don't know if that's the right word, but
When we wrote it,
very
we realized
relational.
that.
Yeah.
We noticed
Yeah.
that
yeah,
the lady who was driving our bus greeted people that
Yeah.
came in.
Yeah.
So she knew.
and I love that about a small system. You have that kind of relational part of it. So yeah, I think our drivers do a great job by and large.
Yeah. Well, because I know like RTD has lower ridership because it isn't as safe. When I used to ride it, it was safe. You never worried about, is somebody going to attack me on it? Is somebody not on medications? Because it did seem like it was more, everybody's going to work and nobody wants to park in downtown Denver.
Right.
It's $18 an hour. I
Right.
mean, a day. We're just not going to do that. So in terms of costs, though, I'm taking this from the Business Times that let's see, I was looking for the costs that you are going to have this significant shortfall. And what are the plans? Are there any alternatives that you're looking at if you lost money? For instance, one that may come about, not saying it would, but is the dollars that, if they pass the initiative, that all the money that is designated for roads, anything that is car or truck related, all that money would automatically go just toward maintenance of roads, and it would stop funding things that are sought money. Would that affect you?
Is that a state thing
It would be an amendment to the Constitution.
for the state? Okay. Would that affect GVT? Is that the question? I don't think that one really would, at least not directly, because the state doesn't really fund our
Very much.
operations very much. We get most of our funding from most of the funding's federal, and most of the match is local. Now the shortfall that you're talking about is because our costs have increased faster than the increase in our federal portion. So it's kind of, we get a block grant and you kind of can have time to spend it, and so we have kind of a buffer, but but that's not that. Again, we haven't we did expand by one pilot route, but that one is state funded, but there's no local match going to that. So there's no we call that a pilot. We're just kind of seeing how it goes. Route 12. It's actually going pretty good, but the state, the state doesn't fund GVT operations to a great extent, and not in a regular way.
And is that part of the Transportation Plan 2050, or what you are doing? And is that mandated that they have a GVT service?
So you're talking about our long range plan, the 2050 year. So that's just for everyone to know, that's the plan that the MPO puts together for long range transportation planning for all modes. So not just GVT.
Right.
We model the region. We model the transportation, the roadway system for the region, and we say, okay, if we grow the way we think we're going to grow, with the number of people we think are coming, well, the state tells us how many people, but I don't decide that.
Yeah.
I can just punt. This is the number they gave me.
Yeah.
But then what shape is our roadway system in terms of congestion, that kind of thing. And it's big, it's high level. It's only the major roadways. But so in that plan, we wrote a chapter for Grand Valley Transit, because most places you have the MPO as a totally separate organization than transit. I think we're fortunate to have them as actually the same office. There's a lot of efficiencies that we gain out of that, I think. But we don't have a mandate to
Have a GVT.
GVT or run GVT, and we are locally in control of what level of service we're gonna run, where the routes are going. Like no one's requiring any. There's no requirements about that.
They don't require you to have it, and they don't require you to service a certain number of people or anything.
No, there's not. If you buy a bus and the useful life of that bus is 12 years, the federal government gave you 85% of that money. They expect you to use that bus for 12 years. So if you stop, there's that kind of thing, but which I think is reasonable.
Right.
But because you wouldn't want a local government to say, I want to build a building for this use, and then say, a year later, let's use it for something else when it was given for a purpose. So there's that. But in terms of like having this many routes or having this many riders or going here, going there, that's entirely a local decision.
And are you finding the local governments, I know the city has said we're streamlining, we're setting our priorities, and this is just the example. Is GVT a priority for the city, and is there any danger of losing funding from the city saying, this is not our big push, we are more in the roads and just the actual pavement and that sort of thing? Or are they saying, yeah, we think this is a necessary part of the budget and a necessary thing in the community?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can't speak for the city.
But are you seeing in funding? Because
I
you
know
would say
that
the funding.
all of our local governments are having funding constraints. Yeah.
So how does that impact you?
Well, we are, the local funds are what gives us our match. So, so yeah, we negotiate. There's the process. That's renegotiated every year.
Okay.
So, there's it's called an intergovernmental agreement, and so we get together as staff. We say, here's the situation, here's the system. Here's the cost, and we usually, we're looking several years out, but the dollars are only agreed to year to year, and we say this is kind of where we're going, and this is kind of what we think the need is, and then there's a discussion every year on if they can meet that or not, and then they might ask staff to adjust make adjustments or whatever, and. We will be the best stewards that we can of whatever resources that we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
The formula is that Mesa County has the largest share. I think it's 65%, and the city pays currently 30%, and then Fruita and Palisade together pay 2 and 3%, or 3 and 2%. So it's and that's been the breakdown. My understanding going back maybe to the beginning. I'm not sure if that's ever been renegotiated, but that's been a long-standing formula. But that does not have to continue into the future. It can be, it's every year. Every year it's kind of brought up.
Adjustment.
Yeah. So, yeah, and we, part of wanting to look at, studying doing this financial study, which is GVT, but also other roadway issues, transportation issues in the community, not just GVT, but is to, we see some funding limitations in the future, and we don't want to get right up to it and we just have to make drastic cuts. Like, we want to know, like, okay, if they're, if we're looking at a reduction, we want to be able to plan for that. Because like I said, people rely on this system.
Yep.
And
They do.
so we don't want to just yank
Say-
it away
mhm.
without people seeing it coming, without being intentional about that. So that's, part of why we want to, think down the road a little bit to make sure that we can make adjustments if needed.
And I guess, I think that I read, and it may have been not true, that if they have that shortfall, they're thinking about trying to put on the ballot a tax for that. What do you think is the how agreeable people would be to a tax for that purpose?
Yeah, that is a possibility. That's part of the study, is so that we can poll a community and see, what seems to, seems to be the kind of what the community seems to be willing or not willing to support. So that's part of what we're studying now. We're pretty early on in that process.
So
Yeah,
it's not something you
it's-
need to have right away?
What do you mean?
That you don't need that tax money right away, so you'd be, we're
Not
talking
right
a year or
away.
so?
Well, yeah, probably a few years before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Before you'd present for a tax?
Oh, no, sorry, that could come sooner. No, that's before we start to see a budget shortfall. Yeah, or before we end up in a situation where there's we would probably need to anticipate service changes before that. But no, there is a potential. It's not for sure happening, but there is a potential that we would ask the community for further support.
And would it be GVT that would be asking, or would it be the county or city, or how do you see that? Who would be making the request for that money?
I believe it would be a countywide, but I think some of those different scenarios and different opportunities are currently being studied.
Being studied.
Yeah. So, but we want to be responsible. We want to ask the community what they're willing to support or not. So,
So if they said no, and what would you do?
I think we would probably have to change our service, reduce our service to some.
Reduce the amount of service, not,
Well, GVT is not going to go away.
No.
Yeah.
well, and I guess what I was thinking is there any way that, and because I'm not a monetary person like you, is there any
Right.
way that you could use like smaller buses where you know that they're not
Yeah.
seeing as much ridership, and saying on this route, maybe we're not doing the whole route because these people using it at this time, or we're going to change maybe a little addition. Say you were going from the workforce center to Catholic Outreach and saying, we're just going to make that a direct route. It's going to be here at this time, and that way, or actually picking them up, doing a little bit of, you have a job interview at this time, so we're going to take you to that.
Right.
I'm just looking for different ways. If you're running a big bus and there's 4 people on it, how could that be done differently? Would that be a consideration, or?
Sure. I mean, I think we would be considering that kind of thing regardless of our budget situation, because I think we're always wanting to provide service in the best way we know how, and the most efficient way we know how. And I get that question a lot, and I appreciate it, because I totally understand where that comes from. You see, it's 6 in the morning and there's not many people on the bus. Why do we have this big bus out there? But our fixed route system, is averages over 10, 11 people per route per hour, and that's across the whole day. So there are peak periods where you're 20, 30, and that's averaging on our higher route rides.
And the bus holds how many?
Well, our low floors, I think there's, I forget how many seats are in it. I think it's 20, upper 20s for a number of seats. And if you I think standing room, if everyone's packed in there like sardines, I think there's 52 people. But then there's, with the buses, just it's a little tangent, but these buses, they're 30-foot low floor, so they're smaller than your typical 40-foot low floor you see in big cities. We do have a couple of 40-foot buses that are useful on our bigger routes, but so they provide more than just space. They provide they deploy the ramp automatically. If you have the cutaways, the old cutaways, you have the driver has to get out of the bus, maybe parked on some busy street, go around, open the doors, deploy the lift, have it come down, raise that person up. It takes a really long time. It's not as, you can really, a lot of times we are slowed down because we're, helping people get secure on a bus, especially if you have a mobility device. So having 2 doors, having a ramp that automatically deploys, having the bus ride low instead of have to, ride high, that provides a lot of service improvements as well in terms of keeping the bus on schedule and speed. And the other thing too is, if you're on a bus, you kind of, there's a certain amount of comfort too in maybe not having every single seat packed out, even though it's possible if it's needed. But if you start to get 11, 12 people on one of those buses, it starts to feel a little fuller, and so there's some of that too. But I think one thing that's often not maybe not thought of as much is that you have a vehicle that's running 14 hours a day through off-peak and peak periods. And so you aren't using that bus to its fullest capacity every time, but you wouldn't just, let's go pick up our smaller vehicle for the morning and then get the bigger vehicle for the afternoon and then go back and get the smaller vehicle for the later hours. There's a lot of empty seats in cars that are going down the road. There's a lot of empty pickup truck beds, so it's kind of thinking about it as more.
But the individual's paying for those. That's the difference.
Well, sure.
Yeah, I'm paying to drive my car by myself, whereas you've got a whole government-funded group that that are being subsidized for that. So just because we're spread farther apart, like you said, you go still, even in Denver, I don't care when you're on the bus, it's more crowded all the time.
Yeah. Well, you had more urban.
I know it's
frictions there.
urban. It's
So you had
closer.
more people would have, maybe something that would make it more attractive to ride the bus. Like it's harder to park downtown or something.
Yes,
or,
yes,
you don't
yes.
have quite, or there's all that congestion, or they, like to just not do that. So yeah, we're a different situation for sure. I guess my point in saying that is that, a lot of times you have a vehicle and you have it with certain capabilities that aren't used 100% of the time. I guess that was the reference there, but forgot. So the smaller vehicle question, or there's the vehicle question, but then there's the maybe pickup drop off kind of take people where instead of having them use fixed route transit, have it more like a taxi service.
For certain groups, not for the entire thing, but say that you're focusing because there's a need for that particular thing.
It's an interesting part of transit now. Sometimes you hear it called micro transit, where you have kind of smaller vehicles going around like taxi service. A lot of people think of that as innovative. It is innovative. It is different. It's not a cost saver in terms of moving people around, because for a lot of reasons, but because when you go door to door to door to door, it creates a lot of extra mileage. So in a way, it's more convenient for the rider, but for the system, when you're like taxis cost a lot for a reason, Ubers cost a lot for a reason, and we have a curb-to-curb service for people with disabilities transit, and that's about 5 times as expensive as a fixed route. So,
And that's good to know.
and there are routes in our system. I think you'd asked what's the lower threshold for when a route's considered low performing. And it's in a situation like ours, that'd be about 8 people a rider per hour, and all of our routes are meeting that. There are a couple that are kind of hovering around there. The thing is, if you look at a microtransit service, even if it's in only a small area and you're having little short trips, if you get 4 people an hour, that's 5 people an hour. That is very efficient in that situation. 6 people an hour would be outstanding. So there's a gap there where you kind of have a lower performing fixed route, but a microtransit service is not going to
be
close
efficient.
to that. So
Right.
you know, you have to kind of look at, are there tweaks you can make to the route? Are there, you know, maybe is there a better use of resources in other parts of the system? But converting to this kind of taxi door-to-door service,
Isn't the way
it's
to
not
go.
really
Isn't
gonna
efficient.
in terms of, I mean, there's reasons to do it, but it's not necessarily a cost saver in a lot of
Okay.
situations. Yeah,
Understood.
Yeah.
So I'm going to interrupt
don't
you
know.
again. So the mobility hub, how will that relate to GVT and the other, and especially, and you probably don't have anything to do with Bustang, but if Bustang goes out, what's the purpose of the mobility hub really
Well,
for the others?
we hope this thing doesn't go out because the purpose of the hub is to integrate all these different modes together so that you have like a one-stop shop location to go between modes. Kind of like maybe like Union Station in Denver, where you have all the trains coming together, the buses all coming together. So we'd want all our regional services to come together with our local services, with the train station, and you know, maybe you could get a place to get picked up by rideshare, and you know, places to store your bikes and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of all in one place. You know, it's the opportunity to partner with CDOT that really created this. It is coming together around an opportunity with CDOT to pursue the hub. We certainly, that was part of the point, is to coordinate all the services together. So, and it says CDOT is leading the project, will be building the project, but it'll ultimately be given to local governments for managing it. We certainly, we have a good partnership with Bustang. There's no sharing of funding in any kind of way, you know, it is a joint effort between CDOT and the locals to pursue that.
Well, I was just going to wind it up here because we're over our hour of time
oh no,
limit.
again, yeah,
I feel
We
like
get
I just
talking.
scratched the surface.
yeah.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
'Cause I feel
Absolutely,
like
that's
there's
what I was going to
something-
say.
Oh, well, thank you. I think one thing I didn't talk about enough, which I wanted to say, is that I think GVT in its current operations is connecting a lot of people to the community that are currently kind of living on the edge of affordability, and so that's one thing I think that's important in considering the value of GVT, is that as the region becomes, cost of living starts to increase, it has been increasing in the area, that if we can keep transportation costs low for especially the part of our community that's really on the edge, then that's I think that is an important investment, because you know, if people lose a roof over their head, then there's all kinds of other costs that start to be incurred as well. So and it's, you know, I think our system has always been designed around trying to serve the people who need it the most, even though it's a public transit system. But if you go all the way back to the beginning, kind of starting as part of Maceability, we've always had good relationships with our providers of human services and trying to link those together. Like that's really been the core of our system, and so that continues to be kind of our focus. So anyway, I think 85% of our riders currently don't have a driver's license or don't have access to a vehicle. I think over somewhere around 80%, at least in a 2023 survey, you know, we're making about $35,000 a year or less in their household. So we are, our most of our riders are, I mean, some of them are students, some of them whatever, but or retired maybe, but by and large, a lot of our riders are people that really do rely on it, and so so and any changes that we make to the system, we would be paying very close attention to that aspect of our system. So
Yeah, no, and that was probably a better statistic, that they don't have a vehicle or they don't have a driver's license. So that was important. Anything else, Ruth?
Nope, I think that's it.
Well, you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we see them, the truth as we know it. You decide. Thank you.
Thank
so
you very much,
Andrew.
Andrew.
Really glad
Appreciate
to
it.
be here.
Yeah.